Ladies and gentlemen, how many of you have a liberal friend who's probably wearing 2 masks while they're driving their car by themselves? I get it. Okay. But I'm serious, how many of you have a liberal friend where you're like, I just wish I could get through to this person? Our next speaker is a former liberal turned free market education activist. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand to your feet and greet Lisa Watson! Keep it going, keep it going, keep it. Watson!
I'm your former liberal friend. I'm the one that you guys are always arguing with. I was her, but you never won the conversation. I just want you to know, not once. Okay, so before I introduce myself, I'd like to start by saying 3 things. 1, thank you to Clay for putting this together. 2, thank you to Pastor John Hagee and Cornerstone Church. And thank you to San Antonio. It's beautiful, beautiful. I do want to start by saying, 3 big things. 1, if anyone had told me 7 to 10 years ago that I would be standing in any church telling my story, I would have laughed in their face and I would have said, you are crazy. That is fake news. 2, as I said, I was the social justice warriors that seemed to be determined to undermine the fabric of America. 3, the fact that I'm standing here is evidence that there is nothing impossible with God. Next, usually when people stand and they give speeches, they tell you a lot about what they know. My mission is to tell you a lot about what I didn't know. My name is Lisa Watson. I'm from Kansas. Woohoo! I had a pretty unremarkable childhood. I'm number 3 of 4 children, daughter of a divorced mom who worked as a nurse. I moved from Kansas City to Los Angeles for college. It was definitely culture shock in a good way. I was having the time of my life. I loved LA. But I was unprepared to be introduced to some of the ideas about God and the Bible that was coming from some of the professors. In one class, I actually had a professor explain that humans created religions to explain the universe. I remember being shocked. The professor seemed to be saying that humans made God. God didn't make humans. And I remember thinking, is he saying that Jesus is the same as Zeus and Apollo? I had never heard an adult say anything like that. Over time, the professors would routinely give subtle challenges to the scriptures. After a while, I was in doubt and confusion, and I was challenging the scriptures too. I ended up moving back home. I graduated from a local university. By the time I graduated, I was calling myself an agnostic. So when I thought I was going to college to learn a skill and build my future, what I was actually doing was building an agnostic and atheist worldview. The dictionary defines a worldview as the overall perspective from which one sees and interprets the world. At the local university, I had work study at the Women's Center. When I thought I was earning a few extra bucks for tuition, what I was actually doing was building a feminist worldview. By senior year, I needed an internship. My superiors at the Women's Center said they can get me an internship. They got me an internship at Planned Parenthood. I reported directly to the director of public affairs. I learned about marketing, branding, lobbying, and yep, I went to those marches in D.C. But when I thought I was getting credits towards graduation, what I was actually doing was building a pro-abortion worldview. During college, I got a job at one of the big telecom companies. I served as a union steward there for 5 years. But when I thought I was simply working to help my co-workers defend their collective bargaining rights, I was actually building a socialist worldview. I was the first person in my family to graduate college. I graduated with a double major in psychology and political science. Let's fast forward a few years. I was attending a holiday party with one of my friends. He introduced me to his neighbor. She told me that she was the regional president of the ACLU. I was gobsmacked. Within 2 weeks, I was on the board of the ACLU. Within 2 years, I was the affirmative action officer of the ACLU. Within another 2 years, I was the president of the Kansas City chapter. Another 2 years, I founded the Racial Justice Task Force. And in less than 2 years, I was promoted to the national board in New York City. But when I thought I was building a civil libertarian mindset, I was building a social justice warrior worldview. By this point, my worldview was atheist, social justice warrior, radically pro-abortion, sex in the city feminist with socialist tendencies. So believe me when I tell you I was not looking for Jesus, but I found out that Jesus was looking for me. I was later told that what happened next was called a divine appointment. I had never heard of a divine appointment. And there was nothing special about this night. I came home from work. I was going to watch a movie and go to bed. A movie I liked was coming on. It was called Love Come Softly. It said right on the screen, Love Come Softly. But that's not what came on. Instead, there was some guy on the screen, and he said the name of his show was I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. I thought that was the funniest name. I said, I'm going to watch this. His name was Frank Turek. Right out the gate, he said he could prove the existence of God and he didn't have to use the Bible. I laughed and I said, go for it. He got right into the science. He told a story about Albert Einstein manipulating the data in his general theory of relativity to give him the answer that supported the prevailing scientific narrative. I was shocked. I said, what? He's Einstein. So now I grabbed a piece of paper and I started taking notes. He went on to explain there's all these hoaxes in evolution. And I said, wait, what? I had been taught some of these fake facts he was talking about. He talked about Watson and Crick's discoveries in DNA. He said Darwin had major doubts about his theory, and his theory doesn't even explain the origins of life. By the time the show was over, I was lightheaded. I was actually dizzy. I turned on the side of my bed, and I heard a voice. And the voice said, you're being lied to. My mind was back on the show. Frank talked about Einstein, Hubble, Darwin, Watson, Crick, and all these hoaxes. These people lived across centuries. They couldn't all get together and conspire to make lies. Then the voice said, the God of the Bible is true. Jesus is his son. When Satan fell, he took a third of the angels and they created all the other religions because they want to be worshiped. Well, this thought has never occurred to me in my life. And I had the feeling that I was supposed to respond, but all I could come up with was, I gotta look into this. And now what started, I call the great unraveling. All I had was this piece of paper and this man's name, and for the next 1.5 to 2 years, I secretly attended YouTube University. I found countless other scientific proofs of the existence of God, for the historical evidence of Jesus, for the facts of the Bible being verified through archaeology, sociology, the historical narrative, the astronomical narrative. But because they're going to gong me, I can't tell you about all of them. At one point, I thought, am I in the wrong political party? That's how simple I was. So I sat down and I wrote down, what are conservative issues? I wrote down immigration, Second Amendment, abortion, marriage, and then I started looking up groups like this, and I started attending these meetings, and I would sit in the back, and the person would come up and speak about what they know. They would give a report on the left, I already knew what the left was doing. And then the meeting would end, and I would always walk back to my car with the exact same question. What's the plan? What's the plan? I never got a plan. At some point, the Lord gave me the plan. Thank you, Jesus. So I don't want to leave you with the same feeling that I had. To assess a situation, I'm going to use an iconic cultural reference. This is the one the Lord gave me. Does everybody remember that iconic television show, I Love Lucy? Everybody knows her. Now, 90% of people get this question right. What's the most popular episode of I Love Lucy? The Chocolate Factory, right. Now, I want you to think about that episode. How many characters are in the scene? Yep, Lucy and Ethel. But the Lord said the most important character is the invisible character. There's a character that's driving the entire scene. That character is the conveyor belt. He said, that's conservatives and liberals. What? He said, conservatives are standing at the end of the conveyor belt, and they're trying to manage all of these issues. Second Amendment, marriage, immigration, LGBT, CRT, Common Core. They're exhausted. You're never going to catch them all. The left, they are the conveyor belt. They have 50 million chocolates on their conveyor belts. That conveyor belt is called K through 12. You are never going to catch them all. Now I'm going to ask you some other questions. Has anybody heard of AOC? Has anybody heard of Ilhan Omar? Has anybody heard of Barack Obama? Did you know where they were? Did you know who they were when they were 10 years old? They were chocolates on the conveyor belt. So you're standing at the end of the conveyor belt waiting for them to be a problem. Isn't it simpler just to shut down the conveyor belt? As long as they own the conveyor belt, there is nothing you can do to reverse the trends. You can win a few issues here and there, but you will never reverse the course of our 100-year march towards the left. Here's the good news. Even when we don't have a plan, the Lord has a plan. After the Lord drip, drip, drip the plan into me, he said, the church has 100% of everything they need to reverse the enemy. 100%. One day the Lord said, how many government schools are there? I said, I don't know. I looked it up. There are 99,000 government schools. Then he said, how many churches are there? I don't know, but I looked it up. There are 330,000 churches in America. Then he said, in what world can 330,000 not beat up 99,000? Yep, there are 330,000 churches in America, and 90% of them sit empty 90% of the time. More good news. I had a lot of bad news, but I had to cut it out. At one point, I asked the Lord, where are we going to get the money? And he said, you already have the money. And I said, I don't have any money. And the Lord said, look up charity in America. For that year that I looked up, Americans had given away $326 billion in charity. That was just giving it away. I did a rough math. I used $5,000 a year for tuition, which we could get to with scale. That would finance 65 million kids in private school. Wait a minute. We only have 50 million kids in the government schools, and we give away enough money to finance 65 million. Good news, we don't need the left to change their mind. We don't need the left to come into agreement. We don't need a rally. We don't need legislation. We don't need the teachers union. And we don't need to take over 13,000 school boards. And we don't need one penny from the government. Yes, I understand you want your taxpayer money back, but that's not necessary to execute a plan. All we need is the church to do what they are commanded to do. We need the church to train them up in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart. And my message to parents and the church is clear. My life is a walking, talking billboard for why Christian parents must run, not walk, your children out of government schools. If I had to condense my message to one sentence, it will be, build K through 12 or die.